All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College Application and Website Development, or AWD 1100 Programming Fundamentals with C# course, I've been doing a series of video presentations that are based on the PowerPoint slides for our textbook, which is, as you can see on the screen, Muroc C# 7th edition. And I have done all of Section 1, all of Section 2. In Section 3, I skipped chapters 13 and 15, and I did 12, 14, and 16, which brings us up to Section 4, how to work with file I/O. And that's what I'm going to talk about right now. Then we'll go into using link. Now, not so much Chapter 18 with link, although a little bit, but the rest of the book is going to be basically be talking about persistence. What I mean by that is the ability for you to have your data persist or last after the program is over. In Chapter 17, we'll see how to do that by using files. In Chapter 18, we'll also do a little bit more work with files and with link. We'll talk about that later. And then in Section 5, we'll talk about how to make your data persist using a database. All right, so that's what we have to look forward to. So with that said, let me jump right in here. And wrong chapter, there we go. Now I am at home, so if you hear any noises, that's what you're going to hear. You know, you hear the clock in a couple minutes, the grandfather clock, possibly my dog. All right. So let's get started. As always, we start with our cover slide, which is how to work with file I/O. And as you can see here, we've got one applied objective to develop an application that requires the use of text or binary files. Our knowledge is to distinguish between text and binary files, to describe the use of such things as file stream, stream reader, stream writer, binary reader, and binary writer. Finally, talk about the two different types of I/O or input-output exceptions, and distinguish between a using statement and a using declaration. So what you're going to notice is when we want to use files in our program, one of the things that we're going to be adding to the top of the program will be a using statement, and in particular, using system.io for system input output. All right, that's going to allow us to work with files, with directories, and with file paths. Okay, so when we work with directories, here's some of the things that are in there with a directory. We can see whether or not a directory exists. Why might we want to do that? Because if we want to create a directory, we may want to check first to see if that directory already exists. Or if we want to delete a directory, we might want to see if that directory already exists. Now, when we start working with this, you'll notice we're going to use the @ sign at the beginning. And what that does is it's going to allow us, when we create paths, to just put in a single backslash. All right, you'll see this more as we get going. And as you can see in here what we're saying is if the directory does not exist, create it, type of an idea. Okay, so again, here are some methods of the file class. As you notice, exists, to see if a file exists, delete, to delete an existing file, copy, to copy a file from one place to another, or move, to move a file from one place to another. And you can see an example right there. Now, again, one thing to realize, excuse me, as we talk about this, is you're going to see more of this in class than you will in this presentation. All right, so we see two different types of files, the two that are talked about in this chapter. The first type are text files. Text files can be read from a simple editor. All right, they oftentimes, most times, end with .txt. All right, binary files cannot be typically read by a simple editor, or if you try to read them with a simple editor, they may look garbagey. Now I want to show you something. I've got a file here that I've created that I'm going to be using in the examples in just a bit, and it's called Of course, I can't find it right now, but we will. It's called instructors.txt. And when I open it with Notepad, you can see these are 6 of the different instructors at Rankin Technical College. Okay. Now, I don't know if what I'm about to tell you is going to work the way I think it is or not, but I'm going to copy that file. So I'm making a copy of it, came down here, and instead of instructors.txt, I'm going to call it instructors.dat for data. Okay. And now I'm going to try to open it up again, the same file. So you've already seen this file open once. All right, you've seen it open once with a simple editor like, okay, you can see it right there. In fact, I might have it open a couple times. All right, but there it is. So now I'm going to try to open it up again, and I'm going to try to open it up the DAT file. So let's see. Open with, and again, more apps. Let's, somewhere in here we should have Notepad. There it is. All right, and it came up okay. I'm kind of surprised. Let's see if I try to open this instructors.dat file, if I try to open it up with an editor like Notepad, what it looks like. Still looks okay. All right, but what typically happens is when you try to open up a non-text file using a text editor, bad things happen. When I mean bad things happen, for instance, here is the syllabus for one of my classes for fall, and I'm opening it up in Word. If I try to take that same syllabus and open it up using Notepad, all right, so I come in here with more apps and I find Notepad and I try to open it up, what's it look like? A bunch of garbage, all right, because there are some binary files are not meant to be opened up with regular text editors. Binary files are meant to be opened up with different kinds of editors, typically the type associated with the program that the file is working with. All right. So let's continue on. So these are the 2 types of files, as it says right here. You get a text file, a file that contains text, string characters. The fields, it says, are typically delimited by special characters. What you're going to see in the example we're going to use in a bit is the special character we're going to use is just going to be a comma. All right? And each line is going to be a record. What does that mean? That means if you take a look at the example I showed you previously, there are 1, 2, 3 fields, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. There are 3 fields, and each line is a record, and each record, so there are 6 records, and each of the 6 records has 3 different fields associated with it. And those fields are going to be the first name, the last name, and the department that that particular employee works in. Okay. Now a binary file, as it says, can hold, rather than just text, it can hold all other kinds of data. All right. Now, when you end up working with a text file, where typically I think we're going to use stream readers and stream writers, and with binary, we'll use binary readers and binary writers. All right, so you can see right there, there's a file stream, which we'll use with both. Stream reader, stream writer, binary reader, and binary writer. And again, one thing to understand here is I am not going to go through all the particulars of working with files. We'll spend a lot more time on databases and a lot less time on files. All right, when you create a brand new file stream that you need in order to be able to work with a file, okay, notice you've got to give it at least 2 different parameters. a path to the file, and the mode in which you want the file to be opened. Now let's take a look at these modes that are shown here. The first is append. With append, what will happen is if the file exists, it'll put what's called the file pointer at the end of the file and it'll allow you to keep writing information there. If it's a brand new file and you choose append, it'll create the file. If you choose create, all right, I believe with create that even if the file exists, it'll move the file pointer back to the beginning, so it'll remove anything that happened to be there previously. But create new, I believe the difference between those is with create new is it'll check first, and if the file already exists, it'll throw an error. We can open up a file in open mode, open or create, and truncate. So again, what's the difference between these? Read means read only. Read write means write, read and write. Write means write only. After you open up a file and do your work with it, you typically close the file. Not only that, quite often what you're going to find is because what if you try to open up the file and the file doesn't exist, either because you gave it a wrong path or you gave it a wrong name or it literally doesn't exist. So you oftentimes do that in the try-catch block, and then in the finally block you close, just in case you made that connection, you close it. So this is the kind of thing we're going to be working with. So what we're saying here is the file we're going to use should live right there. Okay? And we're telling it to create a new file stream, to create it, and give us write access. Okay? So that creates a file stream object for writing. This creates one for reading. And again, you're going to see an example of this. I'm going to go through the entire chapter first, and then we'll go through and write a couple examples. All right? Here are some of the exceptions that can happen when you try doing file input-output. The most generic, as you can probably see right here, is an I/O exception, which means it's an input-output exception. All right. Then there's things like a directory not found exception, file not found exception, an end of stream exception when you attempt to read past the end of the file. So this is an example right here. And again, you see that it's in a try-catch. You can also tell, or you should be able to tell, that the file not found and the directory not found, typically the directory not found, you remember you want to put your more general exceptions below your more specific exceptions. But there's your try, there's a catch, there's a catch, there's another catch, which is the most generic one of all, and there's your finally. All right. So here are a couple common, as it says, methods of the stream writer class. Write, to write the data to the stream. Write line, to write it a line at a time, and to put some kind of a line terminator, typically a carriage return line feed, CRLF, at the end of each line. And the close that I mentioned already. So again, this is another example. I'm not expecting this to totally make sense. I am going to go through an example with you at the end of the chapter, actually at 2 or 3 examples. All right. So when you go in and start using Stream Reader, and remember Stream Reader and Stream Writer are associated with text files. Here are some of the methods that you can use with those. The first one shown there is peek. Peek is look ahead. All right. It allows you to look ahead in the file without actually moving the file pointer. The file pointer can look ahead. And it says, is there anything there? If there's something there, it'll basically return the next character. If you've reached the end, there is no character, it'll return -1. There's read, which tries to read the next character. You typically will put that into a loop. Read line, which as it says, will read a line or a record at a time. And read to end, which will take wherever your current file position is and read to the end of it and return all of that as a string. The close, as it says, closes both the stream reader and the file stream object. Again, there are more examples in here. I'm not going through those right now. Now you'll notice here we've got a using statement, and in here we've got a using declaration. What's the difference? With the using statement, notice it comes complete with parens. So this is all considered to be one unit, as opposed to the using declaration, which makes it two different ones. All right. Now, with all that said, as far as what's the difference between them, we don't have to care about this right now. We will talk about it more in class. All right, so here's an example of working with a text file. It's quite a big example. Remember, the difference between a binary file and a text file is the text file can be read by a plain, simple text editor, where a binary file cannot. But other than that, they work very similarly to one another. So there's another example here with a binary file. Now, I'm not trying to mislead you and not give you much information on this, but again, we are going to write at least 2 different applications, and if I can get the last one to write, 3 different applications. The first 2 that we write will be simple console apps that we'll work with, and if we can get those to work, we'll try to see if we can massage that a little bit and work with a GUI one. Okay, I don't like the ones that they gave you. There's nothing wrong with them. I just didn't want to use those. All right. So that's it. When I come back in just a couple moments, I am going to start going over those. And after I do that, what we are going to do after that is we are going to go into Chapter 18, which is link, which is another way of looking at things. All right. So I'll be back with those examples in just a couple moments.